Oh, well, looky what we have here. Welcome to the Joker Cave. Certainly not any jokes around here. What with all the seriousness of putting geeks in a round table about comic books. You're listening to The Pullback After Dark.
Oh, Aunt May. Resurrection? Well, actually, she was just a genetically altered actress by Great Goblin. Real Aunt May was held captive in the Goblin's basement, rescued by Spider-Man. She was forced to make wheat cakes for years. And it's like, oh, fuck that. Why is that on the list? She wasn't fucking dead.
She might as well have been.
Well, she's dead to me, not returning my fucking eHarmony PMs.
Useless bitch.
I believe there's a hero in all of us.
Hello and welcome to The Pullback. This is episode 65, and you might be asking, if this is a numbered episode, TFJ and Mike, why did I hear the After Dark intro? Well, that's because I'm breaking my own rules, and I had to have something here for episode 65, since DC completely screwed everybody out of Nightwing number 30 and Forever Evil number 7, so Steve and I couldn't actually do the final issue of single-issue Bat books that we were going to do. So, we're here to talk about comic character deaths. I am your host, TFG and Mike. Joining me is Steve Megatron. Hello.
Hello.
Jeremy Howard. Hello. Oh, I'm sorry. You're Dr. Fein, right?
Yeah. Would you believe this is the first time I'm without a punchline?
And of course, from Punisher Body Count, Dane Lamont. Hello, sir.
Hey there, and to be fair to your audience, we are doing this after dark, so I mean, if you want to finagle it, this still counts.
Oh, most definitely. Well, see, that's the thing with the After Darks. A lot of people don't notice this. I publish them Wednesday night after dark.
Oh, wow. Wait, 1 second. Let me put down my smoke here. I gotta do this.
Oh, jeez.
So what happened?
Everyone clap for Mike.
Oh, shut up.
Bad puns all around.
Uh-huh.
Look at
Why
that
don't you go
dedication.
drink some tiger blood? Yeah, exactly.
At least my tiger blood makes more sense than your puns.
I really hate it when Charlie Sheen shows up.
Well, proceed.
Yes. So, we are here to talk about comic book character deaths. We're going to hit on several different topics here in the episode. Let's go around the room. What was the first, each of your favorite comic characters and when they potentially died or came back to life? What was something in comics that you were reading that just completely shocked you, Steve?
How many times they killed Optimus Prime in the Generation 1 comics? From Marvel.
Yeah, once in the animated movie just wasn't enough.
Well, it seemed like they bring him back and kill him every, 5 to 10 issues.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a 5-issue return, and then it would be a 1-issue downfall, and then it would just be Megatron losing his shit because Prime was dead. And then Prime would come back, and then they'd lose their shit again.
Yes.
Replay.
Yeah. What about you, Dane?
I'm gonna put this on its head a little bit because the first character death I really experienced when I was really new to comics, within my first year, I thought, okay, I want to get familiar with comic book culture. What are some landmark things I can read? And the Death of Superman trade paperback was there out in the comic book store, half off, and I go, oh, this is perfect. I can read about this landmark issue. And I just read, while reading it, I realized that I've watched WWF matches with more pathos and story sense than this piece of shit. This is really awful. Is this how all character deaths are done? This is horrific. Why should I give a shit about this diamond monster beating the shit out of Superman? Who is this guy? And that almost made me stop reading comics for a long time. The only thing I really appreciated was it did make me go, oh, Superman's a really nice dude, and I like this guy. I'm sorry he was in this story. I'm sorry he had to go out like this. But hey, even at that point I knew he came back, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah. What about you, Jeremy?
This was a tough one, but I'm going to go to the Mirage comics of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Shredder, because when I started watching the kid-tested, mother-approved 1987 cartoon, after the first movie came out, when I was at science camp, this kid gave me a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic. And he said, well, you saw the movie. This is what really happens in the comics. And, because the comics you couldn't find them because they were so graphic that they were becoming a hard commodity because they were more violent than the show. So when you read the first issue, not only Shredder in the first few pages, but he's killed. And not only is he killed, but he because the rooftop battle, of course, in the movie happens in the comic, but in the comics, it's the four turtles that go in, and they actually are able to bring down Shredder, and then Leonardo gives Shredder his katana blade and says, do the honorable thing and kill yourself with honor. Shredder says no, he takes a grenade, throws it at the turtles. Donatello uses bow to block the grenade and throws Shredder off the building, and Shredder is blown to pieces. And you think maybe he escaped, kind of like, with the movie falling in the garbage truck and yada yada. But this is like he's blown up. And then they just go on other adventures, and then all of a sudden he's back. And, I guess, like, it was hard to get the comics, and now that I'm starting, the Mirage is bringing back the the reprints. And I started watching the 2003 series is starting to come together. But back then, you're like, wow. It's like, why would you kill, like, the most important villain and then just move on like he was nothing?
Yeah. Since I didn't really grow up on comics, I don't have a whole heck of a lot. Like, I thought it was really shocking that, not necessarily she didn't die, but I thought it was really shocking that the Joker nearly killed Barbara Gordon. For me right now, since I'm more into comics now, it's kind of like, forget you, Dan DiDildo, because you're taking away my favorite character, you jerk. Now, we don't know, as of this recording, we do not know if Dick Grayson will come back at some point, but as of this recording, only Forever Evil #6 has come out, and he's dead. And it didn't really have, like, I was more upset with the comic book company than I was with the actual storyline of how he died. Because it's like, oh, God, I don't care. I care and I don't care that this is the 75th year of Batman, but it's just one of those things where they're getting rid of every sidekick, pretty much. And it's like, really? Seriously? But for me, I don't really have one. I mean, sure, it was it was interesting and kind of shocking, even though I already knew about it, that Uncle Ben died in the first Spider-Man movie. I don't know which one handled it better, whether it was Raimi's first Spider-Man or whether it was the first Amazing Spider-Man as far as Uncle Ben's death. I'd say for emotional value, it was probably Raimi's first Spider-Man. And for a different story angle, I would say that it's the Amazing Spider-Man. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, why do these editorial people feel like they need to constantly kill characters?
Money.
Oh, man, I have a whole list of reasons. No, literally, I wrote out a list. I can't.
I'm sure you did. You are that thorough. It's just one of those things where, Dane, you mentioned the death of Superman. The only reason why they killed him was because they couldn't marry him and Lois in the comics because they were doing it in Lois and Clark, the TV show at the time.
Yeah, I heard stuff like that. But actually, like, them getting married in the TV show, didn't that force them didn't that push for the marriage in the comics? Or is that the other? No, it had.
It's the other way around.
Oh,
they
really?
said they had several ideas. I saw this on some special feature. I don't know where. They had said that they were going to marry them in the comics at that time, but they wanted to allow the show to be able to tell its own story. So then they're like, oh, why don't we just kill him?
Oh, see, that's really good filler, In Japanese anime, they just have two people stare at each other for a long time before they punch. But no, that's great. Just have the main character die. Wow.
What else? And really, I don't know out of the big two who is the more sadistic comic book company. Someone whose editorial staff says, oh, well, we can't marry them because they're doing that on the TV show, let's kill them. Or editorial staff that says, hey, let's leave it up to the fans to vote whether this character lives or dies. And of course, all the sadistic people of the world decided to kill Jason Todd.
We know that story, though, right? What the true story was?
What's that?
From what I did have Under the Red Hood for a while on Blu-ray, and there was a special feature, and there was this controversy about the 800 number. And what happened was that because people were confused that we're reading comics for a while, and they kept thinking it was Dick Grayson. They forgot in the 70s he became Nightwing. So when it became Jason Todd, and people were going back and forth. They were on the table because, like, yeah, he's annoying, but does he have to die? So what happened was there's this whole big thing on that special feature where not only people calling the 800 number, but apparently there is
You
a
mean the
collection of
900
the
number.
Oh, it's a 900
Yeah.
number. Oh, yeah, I remember those.
DC got to get paid, son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something about that somebody actually has the actual list and that the votes were fixed, that it wasn't that there was actually a few votes, but then people were like, you know what, nobody likes Jason Todd anyway, and then of course let it be known that Under the Red Hood, well, you know, he goes in the Lazarus pit. But back then there was this whole big thing on whether or not the votes were fixed or not.
I heard that it came down to a margin of like a dozen or so votes. Like, it was close. I didn't hear the idea that it's a conspiracy, man, and that they did it like it was rigged. I didn't hear that. I don't doubt it. I just didn't hear it that way.
Yeah. For me, it's like, I don't know. All right, look, I'm going to jump over to my Marvel soapbox here for a minute.
Sure.
And I know Steve is going to groan when I bring this up, because everyone that I've ever talked to in the last 2 years is just shaking their head at me about this. The Avengers came out in 2012. I've never really cared for Coulson all that much in the Marvel Universe. He was a character. He needed to be there for Iron Man 2, and he's there in Avengers to basically bring the team together. And then he, quote-unquote, dies. Now, this is something that Joss Whedon does a lot of times. Specifically with the TV show Angel, he killed Fred and brought her back as some old one demon, etc., etc., etc. And so they kill him in the movie, and then, hey, let's make some money. Let's bring him back. Let's have him go level 7 with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, I've only watched the first 5 or 6 episodes of the first season. I don't like... It's not about my whole soapbox about Coulson needs to stay dead to keep up the appearance of the Avengers film and the emotion that was in that. I don't care for any of the characters, any of the supporting cast on that show whatsoever.
The thing is, with that show, I mean, and that's kind of its own thing, Coulson was created for the movie verse and then brought back down to everything else. But he was also, yeah, he was instrumental and everything, but too, that show sucks until it gets to like episode 12, and then it starts picking up, and it's actually halfway decent now.
Yeah, see,
because it's tying back into the films, whereas the other one was coming off of the high that we all had of the Avengers, and then you go to this, and then it was kind of like, okay, this is boring, but
yeah.
It was necessary at the time, but now that it's ramping up because of the events of Captain America 2, it should pick up a lot more in the future.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. And as I said, it's not necessarily because of my wanting Coulson to stay dead or have some other plot line with it. Like I said, it's more so the reason why I don't watch the show now has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that I can't stand a lot of the side characters.
But Mike, coming back to the idea of death in this,
yes.
Does maybe Coulson's death turn you off? Because we're talking about comics mostly here, but movies as a medium, I think we've come to expect that even though even in today's Marvel, oh, it's all connected, we got this shit planned out till 2018, we still expect a 3-act narrative with closure and consequence. And with Coulson dying, you got that, but then they did something that you expect in comics, but not necessarily as much in movies and TV, which is, he's back, here's our hand wave reason for it, and enjoy the show, folks. Like, maybe that's one of the reasons it bothers you as much?
I was hoping they would have done something a little different with it.
Marvel, they're going to keep playing that card in the films. But
sure.
What I was hoping for were the early rumors that he was either going to turn into Ultron or that he was going to be a life model decoy.
Or the Vision.
In the show.
Yeah.
So there's that. Let's see here. We kind of already talked about. We talked about our first, the first comic characters that we noticed that died that really had an effect on us. What are some of your guys' favorite comic characters that have stayed dead? There aren't a lot of comic characters that have stayed dead. The only 3 that I can think of are Uncle Ben and the Waynes.
Oh, I've thought
they really don't count, though, because they didn't really... I mean, yeah, they're there for 5 seconds and then they're dead. So, I mean...
they keep coming back, in flashbacks and whatnot.
I think you really need to dig for side characters, and there is a magical way, there is a surefire way of keeping a character dead, even a fairly marquee character, but I don't know if I want to talk about it now or we're going to come back to the why editorial killed characters. Are we going to come back to that topic later? The why they do it?
You can talk about it now if you want.
All right. So let's see. Well, first I'll answer your question of the favorite characters to stay dead permanently. And the first one I actually thought of after looking through my own archives was Sarah Essen Gordon, Gordon's wife, who was also a police officer with the Gotham Police Department. Does everyone remember how she died?
Nope.
No.
Oh man, okay. She died as part of the finale of No Man's Land, the mega series that went through all the Batman comics and was recognized through other DC comics, where there was an earthquake in Gotham, and there was an earthquake in Gotham, and the United States, it messed Gotham up so badly that they lost services, and the U.S. government said, "This is a quagmire. You know what? This is just is not part of America anymore. Have fun with your Mad Max universe." And so Gotham gets split up among different territories, among different supervillains and Batman and the Gotham Police Department. It's really fun because they actually map out. They actually show you on a map, like, here's what the Gotham Police Department control. Here's what Penguin controls. Poison Ivy controls the park. But over time, Law and Order eventually starts taking over. They start taking over the different factions, and the Gotham PD starts slowly sliding in. Lex Luthor actually buys up a lot of land, and being the great guy that he is, gives support to the people of Gotham that got stuck there that couldn't leave in time. And
I'm sorry, but seriously, is that all Lex's backup plan ever is? Hey, I want to go buy land.
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Yeah, there's no land east of Gotham to blow up, so I don't know what his plan was there, or sink into the ocean. But still, he was going to buy up that land and be like, I'm going to just make, this is a sweet idea. I'm going to make my own kingdom. And Superman wasn't happy about it. And part of the big thing was Batman trying to stop Luthor from doing that. But anyway, eventually they take out all the factions except Joker, who never really had his own territory. He was like just this hobo that would just shank people and laugh. Like he didn't give a shit. But for a really long time. And then he was like, oh, wait, this is a really good chance. Because Joker still loved the idea of no man's land. I mean, no law, letting chaos rule. And he wanted to test the idea of that. Like, how much do you care about civilization in the land of law and order? So on Christmas Eve, where the no man's land proclamation was going to be lifted, Joker and his goons, including Harley at this time. This was actually really interesting because Harley was introduced during this time as a DC character. But anyway, Harley, Joker, and a lot of his goons put on this big plan to capture a bunch of babies while causing a bunch of distractions. and they have to try and find where the babies are because Joker is going to do something awful when the clock strikes midnight. And at one point, Sarah finds out where the Joker is, and he's actually like in the basement of the Gotham Police Department at one of the places, at one of the police precincts, and she gets cut off from Gordon. And it's a really tense scene because it's just this. She's a capable woman. This is we mentioned before the show about women in refrigerators, and trust me, if we want to talk about characters that stay dead, there's plenty of superhero girlfriends that just ain't coming back. They had their use and they're done. But one thing that's great about Sarah Gordon is that she's a cop, and Joker's holding a baby, and he does this speech, and she says like she tries to be a cop, has her gun and tells him to like put the baby down slowly. He drops the baby purposefully and she dives for him. And then she drops her gun while doing it, and the Joker caps her and right in the head and kills her. And he just comes right out of the police department and just admits what he did in front of a bunch of reporters and police officers. Gordon is there. He loses it. And it's one of those few, like, here's the thing. If you read DC, every year or every 8 months they do, should I kill the Joker? I mean, he just killed 120 orphans, but I don't know. Should I? And it gets more ridiculous every time. But this was a situation where they just reclaimed law and order, and Joker was testing Gordon to see how much they cared about those things. And Gordon decided not to kill the Joker. Even Batman said, if you do it, I won't stop you. And it meant so much because Sarah died for that law and order. She died for a child, and it meant just as much to me as like saving the universe or whatever, because this is her doing her job and following her own principles. The death meant something, and it reverberated through the Batman stories for quite a while. Like that was, and she hasn't come back. In fact, with the DC New 52, her whole marriage to Gordon was erased. Like, she super died. Her ass does not exist in the new universe. So she's like, so I guess she could come back, but right now she died and then super died. But she's not coming back, but I would almost be upset if she did. Her death had real meaning in the DC universe.
Yeah, that's one thing. This isn't necessarily a comment on comic character deaths, but this is one thing about the Gordon family that I just don't get. You have Barbara Gordon, the wife, and Barbara Gordon, the daughter. I just don't get that.
Oh, yeah, that, and at one point she was a niece. I mean, it's tough. They spent a lot of time figuring that one out.
Yeah, you mentioned with the Joker and death and everything else, and we will get to this next month in Batman month when we talk about death of the family. You want to talk about something that is so anticlimactic. That story is very anticlimactic.
You mean the recent one where he tore off?
Yeah.
Oh, I loved that, because that basically made me realize, this is why I pulled out from a lot of Batman comics, because they do this stuff. Here's the thing, if this was just another story of the month of a 6-issue arc, that's fine. But they were like, this matters, guys! Like, they were screaming that in interviews. And it so didn't matter. It so goddamn did not matter.
And let's not, of course, forget Dark Knight Returns in the 80s with Batman and Joker's quote final battle. I mean, that's probably one of the deaths that I can't wait to talk about, because that is probably at the time the greatest piece of Batman literature I ever read. Because I didn't know. I love how they say in an alternate universe. No, it's a comic book universe. I get it, but if Batman were real, and if he was retired, and if Joker did something so horrific, of course, he claims he's rehabilitated, and he's on a talk show, and he just kills 300 people, and then he's at a carnival, and he's handing out cotton candy to kids, and then you look down, and they're dead from the poison cotton candy, and he's running through the tunnel of love killing people. This time you have to put him down.
Yeah. And, one thing that we should mention is sometimes we get trapped in the DC Marvel dynamic, but there's plenty of characters inside in independent and third-party comics that, their deaths often are permanent, and they do matter. I listed a few of those out, but I can definitely see, like, within the industry, Marvel and DC dominate the idea of death and it not mattering. So, yeah. But I just want to make that clear.
I'll tell you one thing that kind of did matter for me was over in IDW, the current Turtles run.
Yeah.
And how they tell that backstory. Okay, sure, it's just another version of another tale of Shredder killing Hamato Yoshi's family, but they made Tang Shin's death matter because it's. Have you read any of that, Dane, at all?
Sadly, I haven't, but I've heard the series is very good. But go ahead.
It is extremely good. So, spoilers for anyone who has not read the IDW current Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles run with Eastman and Waltz on the writing duties. Splinter and the Turtles are reincarnated from their past lives. And it's very, very well done, and they didn't have this whole monologue of where in the movie, in the 90 film, they were like, Splinter's like, Oroko Saki and I fought for the love of a woman. It wasn't that at all. It was Hamato Yoshi in the IDW series basically left the Foot Clan. Saki felt this is a huge dishonorable thing, and he then went to kill his entire family, because in the series they have 4 sons, and the sons are dressed in red, orange, blue, and purple. So you can kind of see which ones the Turtles end up being. And it's not that the 87 cartoon origin of, oh, hey, a kid's pet turtles fell down the sewer. Not that that's bad, but the writing for the IDW series is so damn good. It's basically a love letter to every aspect of TMNT. Well, it's so good.
Well, the Mirage is even more complicated, because in the Mirage... no, you're going to love... Because in the Mirage, it was actually... It was still that love triangle, but it was actually Oroko Saki's brother, his older brother, that was in love with Tang, and what happened was she chose Yoshi, and Saki's brother started to beat Tang, and then Hamato Roshi was filled with rage, killed Saki's brother, and at the funeral, Oroko Saki vows revenge, and so Hamato Roshi, of course, takes Tang, and they leave to New York to flee because of shame. So it got even, it was kind of like those Saturday afternoon martial arts movies, you killed my master, now I want revenge. I think the IDW, though, is a lot more tighter.
Oh yeah, completely. It is so... They don't linger on the story. They are telling one consistent story with different elements all the way through. I had said on it that when I read Volume 4 that it was the first time when I read the Volume 4, which is issues 13 through 16 of the series, first time in a long time that I've seen anything on television, film, or whatever else that really deals with abusive families, because in the IDW verse, Casey's dad beats the crap out of him, and Raph and Splinter basically go save him, and basically Casey lives with the Turtles now. Casey and April actually both live with the Turtles now in the IDW verse.
Wait, so he lives with them? He's like a roommate to them.
Pretty much, yes.
Child services just doesn't care?
I don't know how
Does he still go to school?
He's in college.
Oh,
yeah, he's in college. Yes.
It's just the way it sounds.
Yeah.
Your dad can still beat you when you're older. I don't deny that. But man, that's just all right.
Yeah, what happened was Raph was separated from the Turtles before they officially mutated. So they kind of spend this time. What happens is when it's starting to mutate, there's this cat that comes out of nowhere, I think old Hob. Yep. And he grabs Raphael, and Splinter, who's starting to mutate, attacks Hob, and then Raphael goes away, and he's going through like, who am I? What's going on? And in the first issue, they're trying to, and by they, Splinter and the 3 other Turtles are trying to find Raphael. So towards the end of issue 1, Raphael is trying to find out who he is, and he overhears this kid getting beaten by his drunk father, and you find out in issue 2 that Casey is in college, but his father's a drunk because Casey's mother had cancer. So it's this whole huge story that you actually care about and feel for. And also, Casey and Raph and the Mirage comics and the movie and the 2000, they've always had a bromance, and because Wrath is supposed to be this angry young person, the angry young teenager, so he can't relate to Leo, Donatello, or Mike, so that's where Casey comes in.
Yeah. As far as the editorial stuff, I don't understand why some of these management people have a hard-on to kill certain characters. Like, I know for a fact DiDio has wanted to kill Dick Grayson since, Final Crisis or something or other?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was a last-minute decision to not kill him.
I mean, I just don't... I don't understand it. You're going to take a character... In my mind, Dick Grayson is the most relatable DC character to an everyday person. Dick Grayson and Peter Parker are pretty much the same guy between the two universes. Of course, they have different aspects to them because Peter is actually, got bitten by a radioactive spider, and Dick Grayson got trained by Batman. So Dick Grayson doesn't have superpowers, but you know what I mean? Yeah. They are the relatable guys to the every person. And why would you want to get rid of that? And that kind of leads me into killing characters just to reboot them. I hate this.
Well, okay, now when you say reboot them, do you mean to kill them and then resurrect them, or to kill them and put them in an entirely new concept?
The second one.
Okay.
Because it's like, it just, no.
Well,
God.
Let me think about that. Like, there's comic book editorial deaths for a couple of reasons. For one, there's just a sign of clearing the decks. This is especially true for team or family books. This can be true of Batman. There was at one point where Batman editorial, especially toward the late 90s, just went like, wow, Batman's got way too many friends. Isn't this guy supposed to be a dark loner? Let's start killing off, like, what's this girl Robin doing here? And they just started culling things down. And what's funny is it's like a sine wave. Like, it always comes back. Because then, Batman just even a year ago had 3 Robins running around. And it was or 3 people that had been part of the Batman ward system. Part of the Batman adoption agency. But and same deal with Superman at one point. At one point, Superman, like, this was before the original Crisis, Superman had, like, super horse, super dog, super girl, and so many other super characters, and so many other Kryptonian survivors. They decided, no, this is making Superman less special. Let's clear the decks. And then there's just things of, let's revise the deck. Let's reshuffle the deck. Like, with when Brian Michael Bendis first started New Avengers, there was a lot of those Avengers started dying very quickly because it was literally the death of the Avengers. That's how it was built. And so a lot of these secondary characters, Scarlet Witch, she went crazy and caused all this destruction, and she would continue to be crazy for a couple more years before she died and came back. The Vision died, and then his corpse was ripped apart by She-Hulk, who was in a rage.
Jeez.
It was just and this was all because they wanted the Avengers to have they wanted to have, like, their JLA. They wanted more commercially viable heavy hitters on the Avengers. So Brian Michael Bendis was put on, I mean, he had a plan for them, but it was put out together through editorial and Brian Michael Bendis to wreck this team. I remember Jack of Hearts. He died before the event in preparation for this. So that's one reason editorial, simply because they want to clear the decks for some new opportunities to tell stories or to purify the brand. That sounds almost like Nazi-like tendencies, but
wipe out all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like Optimus in Dark of the Moon. Kill them all.
Kill them all.
It's just, I guess my current obsession with Dick Grayson, Nightwing, and Kyle Higgins writing that story.
Sure.
Kyle wanted to take the character. Sure. Who is Dick Grayson? He was the first Robin. Now he's Nightwing. Kyle was taking that character. He still had the ties to the Bat family and Batman and Bruce and all that stuff and everything else. He still had the similar costume, etc., etc., etc. Even though the fans hated that they changed it to red. I like the red personally, but it's just one of those things where Kyle had all this stuff where he was going to basically make Grayson his own have his own future, have his own city, have his own kind of thing. And all of a sudden, DC's like, yep, nope, forever evil, villains take over, Dick Grayson dies, your series is canceled, goodbye.
Well,
and then they put Kyle on Batman Eternal, which I'm very grateful and very I'm very happy for Kyle getting the opportunity to do Batman Eternal, but it just, I don't know why they.
Okay, well, no, let's talk about this. Why would they do that? For one, if I was to be in the role of an editor right there, I would say that editors don't quite know what to do with Nightwing as a character. Where is his place in the new 52 DC universe? And plus, they also have to go, where is his marketing potential? Where is his role? Because God, they had such a problem with that with Wonder Woman. They just basically handed her over and said, just rejigger everything again. All right, and she has a home base. She has the Rogues Gallery, and even then, it's like, no, redo everything. But unfortunately, that she, as much as likable as a character of Dick Grayson is, likable people, let's take this in a corporate environment. Likable people who do their jobs all right still get fired anyway. They still get laid off. That's where Dick Grayson is as a character. I've read Nightwing stories in the New 52 where it's like, oh, look, the circus is back. And wasn't he trying to be a police officer again or something like that?
No, he was going to run Haley's Amusement Mile was going to be his new version of Haley's Circus. And then they're like, oh, no, we can't do that. Yeah. We're sending you to Chicago because Tony Zuko is actually alive.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Which I liked. I liked that. I liked that an adult Dick Grayson could go after Zuko and find out. I like that storyline. And then basically what Kyle was going to do after that was basically, keep him in Chicago and explore why Chicago has such a problem with masked heroes.
And that's fine, but think of it this way. Wow. Think how desperate they must have been to bust out the Tony Zuko story for that, in order to keep Dick Grayson alive. Like that, and I'm not trying to talk down on that. I'm just saying, think how badly they must have been hurting to say, like, okay, what are iconic moments of Dick Grayson we can go toward that outsiders would know about that might get them interested? Fucking Zuko. Let's bring that back in. And if that doesn't gain juice for the title, then I guess it's time to kill him off so we can recharge, so we can then 6 months later think of him fondly again.
Yeah.
Because this happened with Spider-Man. This is happening with Spider-Man right now.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started.
But
I can't even. I stopped after the Dark Hours arc in Superior. I stopped reading it because I want to be able to read it in trade to cover it in the pull bag later. I'm probably not going to pick up any of the Amazing stuff until it hits trade, because I prefer, and that's the kind of the direction I'm taking the pull bag in, is we're going to discuss via trade versus single issue, because I just feel that discussing it in a trade that comes out 6 months down the line, I can sit back with my friends and relax and go through kind of each page and talk about each part of the story and everything else, versus sitting here wondering Batgirl number 30 got switched out for this story, and that got delayed, that got pushed back. 0 Year got pushed back a month, and this is coming out now. So I would rather sit back, relax, and have fun with my friends than have to worry about what comic is coming out to do a single issue review of it, to rush it out, to get it out there. So that's more so the direction that I'm taking the show in, is talking about stuff in trade. That way we can just sit down, have fun for 30 minutes to 2.5 hours and just be fine. Steve, what are some of your thoughts on the editorial stuff, the killing him just to reboot him, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I mean, I think that the death thing in comics is kind of overrated, just for the fact that, for instance, let's look at the pre-New 52. You get, they kill Bruce Wayne, and then they let him sit idle for a year, like they did during Nightfall, essentially, except they didn't kill him then, they just injured him. And then it was, somebody else replacing him in the cowl, and then it eventually ended up being Dick Grayson. And then he comes back a year later, takes it back, and then everything's fine again. It's things like that. If you're going to kill him, just kill him. But don't keep playing this back and forth, especially with a lead character like that. I can see in the films doing it one way, and then the comics, they're just, it's one more story. But it's almost gotten to the point where it's wash, rinse, repeat, and it's annoying.
I kind of disagree with that, Steve. I really do. I think that comics, especially on a meta-narrative, like people, unless you are incredibly new to comics, people are aware of death and what that means for mainstream comic book characters. But with Batman dying and just being actually sent through time to fight cavemen and being a pirate or whatever, that's fine, because here's what happened. Dick Grayson got to be Batman. He got to team up with Damian Wayne, and the Batman-Robin dynamic got to be reversed. Batman was now a happy-go-lucky guy, and that was able to take on a fatherly role to Damian. And Batman and Bruce was very uncomfortable around Damian for a long time. It wasn't until he came back that he actually started becoming truly serious as a dad. I mean, he was trying before, but and Robin was able to be the bad cop. So here's my point, is that part of death these days is experimenting with death as a ride we take as a comic book viewing audience, where we can take the character, or if not the character, then the brand, in a direction we could not take easily with a character we are super familiar with, and to see what can happen in this new territory.
Yeah, and I agree with that a little bit. See, that's the thing, like, since I've been reading the New 52, I've said that Grayson is more of a father to Damian than Bruce ever would be. You have those little moments of, them wanting to play video games together, or them actually having a laugh, where we all know it's very rare that Bruce Wayne ever laughs or ever does anything for fun. After all, he just can't get past the title of It's a Wonderful Life. Jeremy, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up on comic character deaths?
Yeah, here's the thing with both Marvel and DC that really, because once in a while, and again, this is where it becomes a conundrum. When it comes to the comic book characters, who really makes the character likable? Is it the writer, or when they adapt it into a TV series or a movie, does the actor make the character likable? It's hard to say. And I don't read that many comics, and it's the movies and the TV shows and the cartoon shows that help me, go back and read them. But when it comes to both Marvel and DC and the documentary I saw on the History Channel about comic book characters and why some were killed and why eventually they brought back, okay, if you want to argue and say that the sales weren't doing too well, I'll buy it. If you're doing it because of shock value, and I'm on the fence with that. But I have to agree, if Batman is going to stay dead, you got to pass the torch. And I feel that, for argument's sake, at least with Batman Beyond, we know that Batman has kind of gone into the Alfred Pennyworth role. That makes sense. Move forward instead of keep going backwards. And I'll even go into the movies. I like the fact that even though Batman faked his death, Robin becomes Batman. At least go that way. But if you keep going, I'm not really dead and I'll just come back. No, it feels like it's a big middle finger. I like the fact that if you're dead, then you have to roll the dice, and whatever happens, unless it's really pissing a lot of people off, and unless you can't second guess yourself and go, okay, I killed this character. Fight for why the character has to stay dead. Make the character worth it. I think the one thing that's always pissed me off the most, and whether it is the comics or the show, when they killed off Optimus Prime, even in the comics, even with Marvel, and then in the cartoon when they killed him, it's like they keep whining about bringing him back. No, that defeats the whole purpose, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah, it's a good thing that we did not bring up a certain deal with the devil, because we'd be here for another hour on that. Comic character deaths, I understand they're going to happen, but what Jeremy was just saying about Batman, about not moving forward and constantly not necessarily creators, but editorials going backwards and this is exactly why I have a problem with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because they're basically just bringing Coulson back to do whatever he's going to do. And sure, in the case of the Avengers, it matters. His death matters. But I don't know. I'm still waiting to see Captain America 2, and we'll go from there. Steve, you got any final thoughts on the comic character death?
No, not really.
Dane, any final thoughts?
Well, yeah, two, actually. One is, I think two other big reasons why character deaths happen is sometimes it's kind of a weird feeling, but sometimes they get old, and I've mentioned it with, like, Dick Grayson as a possible theory of why they might be killing him. And here's the thing, I don't think Dick Grayson's old. I just think right now they don't know how to place him in the current in the current editorial direction. But then there's characters like Barry Allen, who people really liked him when he died in Crisis of Infinite Earths. People consider that really huge, but before that, people did not really care that much about the Flash. And then there's things like the death of Kraven the Hunter. They consider you look at any top 10 Spider-Man list, and Kraven's death is going to be on there. But people saw Kraven as a joke character before that. And when Kraven came back in the last 5 or 6 years, people were upset that he came back because his death was done so well, but they forgot why he died in the first place. Which was because people stopped giving a shit about them. And sometimes the best way you can make people start remember, like, you don't know what you have until it's gone. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but man, that's really true with comic book character deaths. And then finally, I just want to say, if you want to make a character die, through my research, I found there's a surefire way to keep a character dead. Like, I can guarantee you, like, Batman would stay dead if you followed this formula, okay? Have them die connected to a social issue or a real-life event. For instance, remember the 9/11 comic in the Marvel comic book where they all teamed up and Dr. Doom shed a tear for 9/11?
Yeah.
Remember that one? How many superheroes died in that comic? How many, what if Cloak and Dagger, just these side characters, were in the World Trade Center buildings, they would not be brought back. They would not be brought back. If Spider-Man was eating a hot dog at the base of that and just couldn't dodge the debris, he would not be brought back because it's 9/11, man. But the other thing was that if you have a character die due to disease, like real disease, disease that is in the news a good bit, then they're not coming back. Like, for instance, Captain Marvel, as a character, they've toyed with people taking on the mantle, or like, oh, hey, it's a clone, or hey, it's his nephew, but it's never Captain Marvel, because that guy died of cancer while everyone's by him and his cancer bed saying goodbye. And like, that was a Jim Starlin story that was done with such pathos and sadness that no one, like, you would literally have to be like, oh yeah, cancer, that thing that affects millions of people across the world, yeah, this guy, that was a clone that was killed off by cancer. Even in the Marvel universe where they can cure practically anything, you still can't disrespect that. And same deal with there was a Hulk side character named Jim Wilson. He died due to AIDS. He contracted HIV and died of AIDS, and Hulk died by his side. And I'm not saying Jim Wilson's such a critical character, but he's not coming back. So, like, just give someone, like, some really bad disease that people are familiar with, and they can't come back, because that would just be considered too low class, mostly.
Wow.
I know that's heavy shit, man, but that's the only situation where I've seen where characters, like, if you gave, if you gave Squirrel Girl, okay, like, pelvic cancer, like, stage 3, like, she ain't coming back from that. Like, all those squirrels are going to be by her on her deathbed going, oh, God, Squirrel Girl, we will miss you. You were the best of us. And it's like, hey, she ain't coming back.
Is she the cousin to Rocket Raccoon?
Rocket Raccoon would be like, well, better her than me, man. I got a movie deal. I don't have time for that shit. And cancer is the one villain that Squirrel Girl cannot defeat. Oh, Christ.
So I have an idiotic question, though.
Sure.
Because we're talking, okay. So we go back to the Waynes for a minute, because I also remember there was a paperback I had years ago called Greatest Batman Stories Ever Told, where the Waynes are dead, and Dr. Fate comes out of nowhere and says, I'm going to give you a chance to avenge your parents' deaths, which Batman does. And he actually saves Thomas and Martha from getting killed. And what happens is the storyline is changed where he still becomes Batman, but he now becomes Batman because he was a spoiled brat, and he felt that if his parents were killed, that's what, causes all the guilt. But now that he saves them, he'll still become Batman, but now he'll be guilt-free in a way. So my question is, because that story's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, but if they ever tried to bring that story back today, do you think people would come with pitches and, torches and pitchforks and start going rabble, rabble, rabble?
Yes, because this is an uncomfortable topic, but people always go like, "Oh, the idea of comics that matter, like what comics matter in the canon, what comics matter as good stories, what comics matter as continuity." Part of what makes comics matter is how often they are referenced. You can tell the most kick-ass Nightwing story in the world, but if it doesn't get referenced, it will be forgotten over time. But Batman's parents are referenced pretty much every comic, like within the introduction, if that's the format. So because that is so heavily referenced of their death and their death causing Batman to be Batman, Bruce Wayne to be Batman, then yeah, it would be a problem because it's so referenced. It is the ultimate in mattering.
Any final thoughts for comic character deaths, Jeremy?
No.
Okay. Dane, where can people interact with you online if they would like to do so?
Well, let's see here. You can interact with me on our Punisher Body Count Facebook fan page. We also have a website, PunisherBodyCount.com, the world's best podcast for all things Punisher, with my co-host, Jake, and I.
Yes, the Dick Grayson of the Marvel Universe.
Yes. Also, yes, delightful. Also, we have another side podcast called Dane and Jake Get Classy, which the title pretty much jinxed us because now Jake's wonderful wife Emily is a co-host who's an artist, so she adds a wonderful art perspective. But you know what? The brand's already there, Emily. Too bad. Can't get in on that action now. Too bad.
Wow. What about you, Jeremy?
Hanukkah Outcast podcast, and next month, because Godzilla is going to be stomping his way back, Matthew Broderick free, I might add, and Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich free, I might add as well. Hanukkah Outcast podcast is going to be having a Godzilla week, and possibly even a Godzilla month, where I'll be discussing Godzilla Rules of Earth and a few of the better Godzilla movies, especially I will be talking about Godzilla 98 because it did come out in May, but it's going to be a challenge on that one. And
that's a lot of fish. Am I right, guys?
Yeah, that's a lot. Poppity pop pop, yeah. And also, since I've of course been hearing the rumors about Batman 66, the TV show coming, I have taped the episodes off of TV for years and years ago. So I'll be starting to discuss Batman 66, the TV show. And I also will be discussing my top 37 Disney villains, which will be interesting. So I have a couple interesting Hanukkah Outcast podcast episodes that'll be rearing their heads soon.
Awesome. What about you, Steve?
Well, as usual, I have Altered Geek coming out. I have Future Imperfect and many other things going on. You can reach me on Twitter at SCP21.
All right. That's going to do it for this episode of The Pull Bag. I have no idea what's coming next. Make your great escape into comics, and we will catch you next time.
Hey, Geekcast listeners. Do you ever listen to Punisher Body Count and think to yourself, This show would be awesome if it had less toilet humor and was not about the Punisher. If so, join me, Emily Williams, as I class up the Punisher guys on Dane and Jake Get Classy, or like the Oprah Book Club of comics. You'll hear us discuss famous works like The Dark Knight Returns and The Crow, along with graphic novels no one else is talking about, like Blue Monday and Blankets. You can find us at daneandjakegetclassy.wordpress.com or on iTunes.
You've just heard the latest episode of The Pullback, the GCRN's comic review and discussion podcast. There are several ways to get in touch with us and leave feedback for the show. You can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on the episode and all of our different podcasts. You can rate our show on iTunes. Be sure to leave us feedback. Call the voicemail line, 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you're leaving the message for, and your name. Become a fan of us on Facebook by searching Geekcast Radio Network. Send us an email feedback at geekcastradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at geekcastradio. So until next time, make your great escape into comics and unleash the geek in you.
We're all on the same page, right, guys? You shouldn't flush those things. That's how New York got giant alligators in the sewer. That's just an urban legend. Oh, you think so?